All right, welcome to the Gateway API meeting for October 16th, 2023. As always, if you don't mind, please go ahead and add your name to the list of attendees here. It just helps us keep track of who's able to make these time slots, and also at the same time, it can help us decide what times work best for people as we continue to experiment with that. All right, let me walk through the agenda. Before I go too far, I just want to remind everyone that this is a Kubernetes community meeting, which means we abide by the Kubernetes Code of Conduct at a high level. That means just be nice to each other. We've never had any issues, but please take some time, be respectful of other opinions, and if you don't mind using the raise hand feature, that it makes sure that we can get to everyone that has an opinion. And all opinions are welcome. And please, as always, don't hesitate to add things to this agenda. I'll take a quick second and drop a link in chat if anyone can't access it. Yeah. So with that, let's jump right into our meeting notes. 1.0 is really top of mind for me, and I think most of the maintainers. We are in the final weeks before release. And hoping today, knock on wood, will be the day that RC1 goes out. And so there are two PRs that will need to merge before that happens. One is the changelog, and I'll just really briefly highlight the contents in here. The RC1 changelog is usually very much reflective of what the final changelog looks like. So if anyone has some time to give some additional rounds of review, it would help just make sure that our final changelog is really, truly representative. In our last 0.8 release, I know I missed one feature at least. So don't hesitate if we've missed something in here, please don't hesitate to call it out, or if there are typos, anything like that. But just as a quick reminder, Gateway class, and HP route are going to GA. We're continuing the cell migration, which means in this release, the webhook install is optional. And then there's a surprisingly long list of experimental features coming in this release. Backend TLS policy. Thanks, Candace, for pushing that one through. I'm beyond excited that we finally got that one out. Lots of patience and hard work all around to get that one through. Then HBR out timeouts, similarly long running one, but really excited to get this one. Gateway infrastructure labels, Dave's GEP for basically WebSockets, HTTP2, and other protocols to the back end. And even Garov's work on Gateway Cuddle is also now merged. So all of these things are coming in this release. It's a lot. So yeah, anyway, that's a high level, but please take some time, take a look at this, and see if we missed anything along the way. Next up, this is kind of maybe a big, probably the biggest PR in a while. This is adding the V1 types. So the part that actually formally graduates gateway class, and HV route to V1. There's a lot of changes in here. I won't highlight all of them, but the key bits are that conformance tests and a lot of tests are switched to use V1, but the examples still stay as V1 beta 1 because that's what our doc should say until this gets to 1.0 finally, and not just release candidate. We also keep the storage version at V1 beta 1. This is all for backwards compatibility. And in general, I'd recommend that implementations, if you're trying to support a variety of versions of Gateway API, the safest thing is to continue to read and write from V1 beta 1. So what that means in practice is that when 1.0 is released, if you were conformant with 0.8, by and large, you should be conformant with 1.0 without needing to make any additional changes. Yeah, I think those are the big things. Oh yeah, I should also mention that V1 Alpha 2 in the 0.80 release of Gateway API, we already marked it as unserved in the CRD. Now it's going to go to skipped. So if you have any old implementation lingering around that is still reading or writing from V1 Alpha 2, that will be problematic. That would have been problematic in 080. It will be especially problematic now. So just a heads up. Hopefully you've already moved on to V1 Beta 1. Any comments or questions? I know that was a lot of stuff to run through really quickly.
For the storage version, is there any API difference between V1 Beta 1 and V1?
And there is not. Good question. Yeah, so V1
Okay.
and V1 Beta 1 are identical.
Yeah, the API review that we're doing is actually basically the changes from the V1 Beta 1 structs from like now from 080 till now, and then with the intent being that we're just going to take that we're going to do this and take the V1 Beta 1 structs and just rename them to V1.
Yep.
So there are zero spec changes, there's zero API changes between V1 Beta 1 and V1. It's just a straight rename.
Yeah, and actually, speaking of renames and such, I should call this out. Shane called out an important point that the way this is being done today means that we're going to lose commit history in the sense that V1 files are not going to have the commit history from V1 Beta 1. There is a way to maintain it, but because it's not just a direct copy, there's also modification involved to change things like storage version, API version, etc. That I didn't feel comfortable doing a straight copy. So yeah, anyway, there is a way to maintain Git history. I think it's too complicated and risky, but if anyone wants to volunteer, can give it a shot. But right now, I think we're just going to run with what we have here. And yes, that's exactly it. I mostly just wanted to win dev stats. So yeah.
A follow-up I have, is there a reason why you don't want the storage version be V1?
Yes, it is the most convoluted thing. At some point, I should pull up an
pile
old
of things to talk about with managing CRDs. Yeah.
Yeah, I have this old diagram that I gave in a Contrib Summit talk last year sometime, I think. But basically, the idea is you are not supposed to bump storage version in the same release. You're adding a new version. You add the new version and then bump the storage version in the next release. Rather convoluted that's the way it's supposed to work, but that is it's like a 4-stage release process, four minor releases to really cycle through and get to a new version fully and get rid of the old one. Which is one of the key things that inspired the let's not have beta thing, because it is real painful to cycle through API versions. So yeah, this should be a one-time pain that is no longer, it's not something that we keep on dealing with going forward.
Also, given that they're identical, like the storage version changing is basically a no-op.
Yeah. All set. Cool. Okay. Yeah, feel free to take a look at these. But as I mentioned, very likely these are going to merge in the next hour or so, because we are trying to release sometime awfully soon for RC1. And then, as always, once RC1 is released, or any release candidate, we benefit so much from anyone in the community testing it out, running performance tests, actually trying it with an implementation, etc. That is how we get our most useful feedback. There's only so much testing myself, Nick, or anyone else can do here. So we really, really appreciate and benefit from any testing that others in the community can do as well to give us feedback, because as the next bullet point says, we're aiming for a final 1.0 release around 2 weeks from now. So it's coming really quickly, and we want to make sure that we catch as many problems as possible and can truly address them in this time window. Yeah. So with that said, we still have some work needed primarily on the docs side. Candace is going to be working on backend TLS policy docs. I think we have someone working on HTTP route timeouts docs. But for others, I mean, I'm sure if you reach out to the owners of these gaps, I'm sure they would appreciate help with writing docs for the gaps. And this is, again, just trying to make sure that we have everything lined up for this release. We want to make sure that our docs are ready to go to cover all these new experimental features. So if you have any cycles and are able to spend them helping to, document these gaps that have made it into the release, I'm sure everyone would appreciate that. With that, maybe Dave, I'll hand it off to you because you've got a conformance test to talk about.
Yeah, I just wanted to, this is the backend protocol. So this is HTTP2 over clear text. Wanted to highlight as I was trying to write the conformance test, there was 2 ways to do HTTP2 over clear text. One is via doing an HTTP1 call with an upgrade mechanism, like an upgrade header with the H2C as the string. And the other one is prior knowledge, where essentially you already know it's serving HTTP2, and then you do a connection preface with like a special thing. And HTTP1 servers would reject that because they don't understand the verb. What's interesting is when I was trying to write the upgrade mechanism, I realized it's very difficult to do in Go, and I found an issue for it. And then someone thankfully pointed out that, hey, it's deprecated in the latest RFC for HTTP2, which came out last year. So given that, I've kind of just posted the links where like, hey, I'm going to update the app protocol definition to not include the header upgrade. So it's just prior knowledge. I don't think we should recommend implementations add support for something that was kind of marked deprecated. And
sorry, can you clarify what was marked deprecated specifically?
Yeah, so if you click on it's deprecated in the latest HTTP2 RFC. So there's a HTTP upgrade mechanism when you do an HTTP1 connection to upgrade to a different protocol by specifying H2C as a string. So like it has the same mechanism for WebSockets. So the H2C one is to say like, hey, switch to HTTP2.
Oh. Sorry, I think my audio cut out. Keep on going.
Okay. Given that, so essentially my conformance test was going to have both ways to establish HTTP2 connection over clear text, but given that one is deprecated, I decided to omit that one and just say, let's support the one that is, I guess, the more common one. And I'm going to update the sort of the docs in the Kubernetes enhancement that mentions this, and also the Kubernetes types, because it's actually annotated in the service port. So I'm just giving an FYI about that.
Sorry, my audio cut out partway through there, so I missed the middle bit of that. But I just want to clarify here. Are you removing the idea of H2C as a whole, or just the suggestion that it be used as an upgrade header?
The suggestion to be used as an upgrade header, and then I'm going to update the keps to say H2C means HTTP2 over clear text, and it's going to be using prior knowledge. You should be using prior knowledge.
Got it. That makes sense.
So I think the PR is ready to merge. There's a few.
Got it. Okay, I understand now. Thank you for digging through all of this. Yeah, there really is a
So
bunch.
this also means you'll want to update your release notes, your change logs to point to the newest RFC as well, which I didn't realize there's a new one.
Oh wow. Good find. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for catching this. Great. Okay. Um yeah. Thanks for the heads up. Anyone else have comments on this one?
No, just a thanks from me as well. That's awesome.
Cool. All right. I'll just run through this and I think it all makes sense. So I owe you a few reviews here. Yeah. Thanks, Dave.
I think a quick follow-up is I thought HCC would be the lesser known supporter protocol, so I prioritized that one. Do you still want me to land a WebSocket one?
I thought
That
you
one
all
will require for WebSockets, there's a GEP, but there's no conformance test for WebSockets. And
Oh, I see what
I
you
think
mean.
yeah, and it'll require a little bit of work because of how kind of the conformance test just like expect a HB connection and then start sending requests. Versus WebSocket would be like establish it and then maybe send some messages. So do people have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I do not think it needs to block by any stretch, but it does seem like having that be a feature that an implementation can claim to support via conformance tests and support feature mechanism makes sense to me. I completely get that it would be a change from what we're doing today already. Yeah, and the other thing I would highlight is the way that it's written in the spec. It is implementations can support WebSockets without the user specifying that app protocol. It is just a way to ensure they're supported, but it's not a
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. Cool. Yeah, but I think it's going to be a little tricky to test that as well as what you're saying, but it sounds to me like a useful investment in time. But also certainly not a 1.0 release blocker, just maybe something like we want to have before this graduates from experimental to standard. Cool. Well, thank you, Dave, again for driving this. This has been one of the most complex and convoluted things, and I appreciate you driving not just the gateway side, but also the upstream Kubernetes side of this. Cool. Let me keep on moving then. Real quickly, I wanted to call out Ingress to Gateway, which is just about to release 0.1. This is something that Lior and Kobe have been owning, and they have an RC1 that's just about ready to go, and a corresponding pull request blog post coming up for Kubernetes blog. I would encourage anyone and everyone to give this a review. I know Lior is working on some updates right now, so maybe give it a day. But this is something that's probably going to be a blog post in the next week or so, along with a corresponding 0.1 release of Ingress to Gateway. So again, any additional feedback and thoughts on this would be very helpful. And this is, although this is celebrating the release of Ingress to Gateway, the tool, I think it's also trying to make a case for moving from the Ingress API to Gateway API, because Gateway is about to be 1.0 in GA. So yeah, any additional thoughts to help make a compelling case here will be helpful for everyone, I think. And next up, I think just a couple things in triage. Anyone feel free to add anything else. First up is Danian just has this conformance test to exercise attached routes. This is one of the things we had in the 1.0 milestone. And, you know, this is one that I've looked at and on the surface looks correct to me, but what we really need here is just one or more implementations that have, you know, tested this and verified that it works with their implementation as well. I think, Danian, you may already be trying this with one or more implementations yourself.
Yeah, I tried with Envoy Gateway, and it's not passing, and it's not expecting to pass because there's already an issue within the Envoy Gateway repo. But I'm also testing Contour, but haven't been able to fully test it just yet.
Cool. Well, thanks for getting this one in.
Yeah, Rob, one last point. Yeah, if there's anyone on the call that knows of an implementation that should support this, please jump in, comment, or even if possible, feel free to test as well and report back.
Cool, sounds good. And last one here is yeah, this has had, I feel like, almost everyone comment on this very, very long thread of what we want to do here for direct policy attachment, specifically when you have two policies, one targeting a section name and one targeting the entire resource. I think this has been cleaned up pretty well now and appears to represent the consensus on that thread, but I'd really like to encourage the people that either have already looked at this and need to take another look now that's been updated, or also just anybody who's involved in policy attachment, please take some time to read through this. If you've already implemented or are considering implementing policy attachment with your implementation, this will affect you. You don't want to have any surprises here, so yeah, would appreciate some broad feedback on this one. Cool. All right. I think that's all. And just I should have clarified what the actual consensus right now appears to be, and that is that the policy targeting the section name overrides completely, overrules any policy that is targeting the entire resource. So hopefully that makes sense. We're trying very, very hard to avoid any kind of overlap with inherited policy attachment. So again, as the name suggests, this is direct and it only affects the thing that it is directly attached to. But yeah, just appreciate feedback on that one as well. And with that, we have made it to the end of the list very, very quickly. Any last comments, thoughts? Anyone want to bring anything up before we call it time?
I guess in the V1 change, the type change, you're also changing all the conformance tests to V1?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah, so I should, on that note,
The conformance test updates will need a rebase, and to make sure you target the V1s once we merge the V1 PR, which should happen this morning or today. Sorry, it's morning for me, it's not for you.
Yeah, time travel. Exactly that. And so what that means in practice is if you're running conformance tests against RC1, you're going to have to install the latest RC1 CRDs, but your actual implementation could and probably should still just read and write V1 beta 1. But you will need the newer CRDs to be present because you'll need V1 to be present because that's what the conformance tests are going to be reading and writing with.
Hopefully part of your conformance testing regime is installing a fresh copy of the CRDs anyway, but yeah, good to call it out.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. All right. I think that's everything then. Thanks everyone. Hopefully we'll see some of you at KubeCon in just a few weeks. And if not, we'll see you online. And yeah, hopefully we'll have an RC1 out soon. And I think we're on track for a 1.0 in just a couple weeks. We'll see. Thanks everyone.